Hey, this is episode 1 of the 360 Mastermind podcast, and we have with us today, actually, to start with, my name is Jon Ewoniuk. I run the 360 Mastermind, focused on helping Salesforce agencies, partners, consultants, freelancers, and bigger agencies as well, meeting together as a group, networking, collaborating, tackling challenges together. And today we have as our first guest, Mike Rogan, who is the founder of Wayfinder, which is a Salesforce agency. But thanks for joining us, Mike.
Sure thing, John. Excited to be here.
And Wayfinder.cc, I think, is the website.
You got it.
Where did Wayfinder come from?
So it's actually, on a personal note, I'm a runner, and I always try to align my personal and professional journeys together, and was trying to think of a name that could really play off all the running that I've been doing, and also the ongoing learning being part of Salesforce ecosystem. There's a lot of parallels between the two, and it's a journey, right? So I was just looking for something that was aligned with that, where I could tap into my expertise that I've, as I've evolved throughout the ecosystem, and really help clients on their own journey and be their wayfinder.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So backing up, how did you first get introduced to Salesforce?
So similar to a lot of others, I was an accidental admin. I worked at a large technology company and was in a business intelligence role. When I first encountered Salesforce, I was supporting the sales and marketing teams and was basically told, hey, Mike, we're going to roll out Salesforce. We're going to do this as a line of business effort, and we're going to be relying on you to deliver it. So I didn't know anything about Salesforce at that point. It was totally new to me, and I had to figure it out quick, right? So
Yep.
that was my first exposure.
So what did you do at that point? Did you try to quickly learn as much as you could on your own? Did you figure out training? How did you handle that?
Yeah. And I'll say this was like over 15 years ago, so there was no Trailhead.
Right.
Trailhead did not exist, so that was not an option. So we
The
also
iPhone might not have existed yet.
Yeah, it's been a minute. So there were limited options when it came to learning. We also didn't have the luxury of working with a partner. It was, this kind of tiger team that was built to roll it out internally. So we had different roles in terms of how the work was distributed, but we didn't have anybody external. And we also didn't have internal support from the IT organization. So it was purely the business is going to roll this out, and we had to figure it out quickly and scramble. So in terms of resources, what was available was the path to becoming an admin. And so I made it a priority to turn that accidental admin experience into a real one and quickly get skilled up on what I needed to know to pass that exam. That led me to a number of different resources that I found online from others that had more experience. So I really just drank from the fire hose, so to speak, and learned as quickly as I possibly could with a priority on, supporting that rollout.
Yeah, and I think that's some of the initial challenges and obstacles I'm sure you had. Were there any other memorable times you had back then working through those fires, things that came up, things you had to figure out? How was the business during that whole rollout? Was it just kind of crazy and excitement at the same time?
Yeah, it was a little chaotic, but overall it was very positive because we were delivering such a great experience for the users and they were excited about it. So having that level of energy around the effort made it all worthwhile, even though we didn't have all the answers and we, realized it was going to be a phased approach. We're going to start with, a couple of different teams and then expand it out. It ultimately went global, and we ended up rolling it out to over 10,000 users worldwide. So it's one of those success stories, but it didn't happen overnight.
Yep.
It was a process.
Those are exciting times. So then starting there, how did your Salesforce journey the last 15 years, how has that evolved from kind of where you started and kind of along the way to starting Wayfinder and where you are now?
So after initially starting off as a customer, I had that experience and started to get my certs beyond just the core admin. So I worked with the platform as a customer for a little over 4 years, supporting that global rollout as well and enabling the teams around that. After that, I got into consulting and went to one of the larger global Salesforce SIs to help other customers implement the platform. And I did that for a couple of years and traveled all around, kind of replicating that experience that I had and that energy for other clients, not just in the, enterprise tech space, but I got a lot of cross-industry experience with customers of all sizes as well across, different segments. So that was my first, expanded experience outside of that, initial time where I didn't know anything about Salesforce. So I was then helping others, achieve their goals and expanded beyond, the initial products I was working with as well. So started to broaden my experience with the platform in that capacity and get even more certs to expand my knowledge.
So you're a consultant, traveling around. That's always exciting times too, right? You're going to different cities, meeting different people, different projects, different companies. Yeah, those are exciting times.
Building relationships, and relationships matter in this space, 100%.
Yes. Yep. And then from there,
more than you think.
Yeah, for sure.
So from there, the next step on my journey was at the mothership itself. So I had the opportunity to join Salesforce initially as a solutions engineer, helping solve problems for a lot of, Salesforce customers across different segments. And I was based on the East Coast in that role, and also was, in that capacity for a couple of years before getting the opportunity to join the HQ team, where I moved into product marketing. So as an SE, I was helping support a lot of the product marketing initiatives, particularly around events like Dreamforce and the World Tours. Had the opportunity to help build demos for the keynotes and things like that. So it was really a great opportunity to join the HQ team after being in the field for a couple of years, because I could take those customer experiences back and, make sure that the product teams were hearing that feedback from customers and really having the voice of the customer brought back to product and marketing to help refine the messaging and delivery of all the content around that.
That's cool.
From there, I started to, still at Salesforce, I started to get more into enablement and building a lot of the content for, certifications, trailhead content, also training Salesforce AEs and SEs on the latest and greatest functionality with each release. So I got closer to actually delivering the type of training that I was looking for in the early days as a customer before Trailhead and all that existed. So I was now finding myself in the role on the other side of that experience, delivering the training. And I felt like those experiences that I had up until that point had enabled me, to be able to tailor the content to each audience really well.
Perfect. That's a cool journey so far. And then where did it get to the point where you decided to jump off on your own and start your agency?
Yeah, so I started as an independent consultant about a year ago, and I felt like these experiences that I had along the way had really set me up for being successful in this role, where I could help speed up the experience for my clients of learning exactly what they needed to know to move quickly, really helping to optimize their tech stack and their investments in Salesforce and other complementary tools in their ecosystem. So I just felt like the time was right to be able to package my specific experience and help others move quickly. And, there's a lot of complexity out there, and it's changing. This space is changing so rapidly, especially with things like AI being introduced more and more every day. So I felt like I had the right combination of experience to set out on this path and be successful.
Was there some times where you were kind of nervous? Were you kind of excited? Kind of all the emotions all into one? Or were you good and calm? Or what did it feel like doing that jump?
It was a little scary, for sure. thinking of the journey, the next steps aren't really clear. You can have a great plan, but things might not go according to plan. So it's a riskier path, but I think the rewards are even greater. But yeah,
Yep.
every day was, not like a perfect, kind of like going back to the running analogy, like not every time you go out and run, it's not the best. You're going to have setbacks, injuries, obstacles along the way that you need to recover from, but payoff is great.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned the Salesforce ecosystem, and it's definitely evolved over the last 20 years or so. I'm just ballparking, but what are the changes you've seen in the ecosystem, the Salesforce ecosystem overall, as you've kind of watched it evolve over the last 15 years?
I would say the biggest change that I've seen is more of a focus on ROI. So achieving ROI very quickly, not only from investments in underlying software, but also the services surrounding that. So I think there's more of a focus on, are we getting the most from our investment? Are we getting it as quickly as we possibly can? So just measuring that and focusing on it, I think, is a huge priority now versus, not too far in the past. There was more of a tolerance for, this was a great app or this is great functionality. Let's just turn it on and see how it works. And we're not really going to measure what success looks like. I think that's changed now based on a number of different, factors with the broader economy and just the evolution of the tech itself, with more and more automation coming into play. So I think that focus on ROI now is front and center for a lot of clients.
I agree, because it started out as a website, and then it was more technology driven. It seemed like the mobile app came out. Hey, we got to get the mobile app set up. Lightning, all these different technologies came out, and then obviously 2020, 2022 was digital transformation for a lot of companies. Same thing. Let's get the technology out there. People need to work from home. I think a great point with the ROI and kind of outcomes right now. That technology side has been pretty much built out with everybody, and now they're looking at how can we get the ROI and the benefits from it from that perspective.
Yeah. And the space is really crowded, also not just, again, from both perspectives, from a tech as well as a services standpoint. There are a lot of different providers and it's harder to differentiate. So it really comes back to who's going to get me the ROI the most quickly and really support the process that we need to be successful.
Especially in the SMB space, a small business has a lot of options to choose from. So it's really, I agree. It's making sure the clients have the right fit, the right product, and then getting the ROI and the solutions that they need. So in terms of being a Salesforce, essentially independent consultant partner the last year, what are some of the biggest challenges you've had yourself and over the last year or so trying to roll this out?
The single biggest challenge has been, this builds off the last question, John, around ROI and just changes in the space. So the biggest challenge, I would say, has been clients that feel like they've been oversold, either in terms of the licenses they have or the services they've consumed in the past. They feel like they don't really have the right fit for their organization, and they're looking for a better way forward. That's a positive and a negative, right? Because they've had those experiences. That's a negative for them, but it's a positive for me in terms of opportunity. It's just a hurdle to get over because they've got those past experiences top of mind, and they're really looking for someone that can come in with a fresh perspective and deliver a right-sized solution.
So, and along those lines, I'm assuming, is that one of the differentiating strategies you have as a partner and how you differentiate yourself?
Yep, for sure. But I will say that slows down business development effort because it takes longer to get through the process to tell the story and address all the concerns based on some of those past experiences.
Right. So knowing your journey, what advice would you give to someone that's looking to start a Salesforce agency or become a consultant, independent consultant, and make a jump on their own? What's kind of the main pieces of advice you'd offer to them?
Find your niche for sure. Differentiate, because it's a crowded space. It's hard to stand out. And also just put yourself in the shoes of a prospective client. There's a lot of confusion around not only the tech itself, but how do I find someone that I want to work with? Do I have, what is my path to engage a consultant?
Right.
So just think about it from the perspective of who you're targeting and what they're going to be looking for, who they're going to be reaching out to. And I go back to the network because, like I said at the beginning of our conversation here, the network is super, super important. That's how I got started, was by leveraging my own network where the trust was already established, and never, discount the importance of a strong network, especially when you're first getting started.
Right.
Build relationships. You never know when you're going to need to reach out to someone, and they might know someone who needs help. So the network impact is huge, especially getting started with your own consulting firm.
Do you find it networking with, I'm assuming you're talking not only the Salesforce ecosystem network, but your previous customers, people you've worked with 20 years ago?
Definitely.
Have you seen good strategies on how to network, either via LinkedIn, reaching out to them, giving them a call, going to Dreamforce and all of the different conferences and forums, or how do you go about leveraging your network?
Yeah, it's a combination of different approaches. I personally see the best results from having direct conversations, whether that's at events, like some of the community events, like the Dreamin' events. Just came back from the Northeast Dreamin' event yesterday, actually. So there's an opportunity to engage there directly. Also, Salesforce sponsored events like the World Tours and Dreamforce, although they can be kind of chaotic, and I think it's easier to overschedule calendars at those type of events, and it's harder to get attention. So my focus is more on the smaller scale events, more of the regionals, also getting in with the local user groups that meet regularly, sharing knowledge, and just, putting yourself out there as a thought leader, talking about your experience, what you've learned along the way, being open to answer any questions that folks have, and engaging one-on-one. I feel that's where there's the most success. Outside of that, there's so much noise on LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn is great, but it's getting harder and harder each day, I think, to stand out. But the more that you can personalize and target your ideal customer, the better. So again, try to put yourself in their shoes. And the in-person events and interactions totally help with that, right? Because you can validate what's top of mind for a larger group of folks. If you've got an idea, you can have a conversation at an event like that with even just a small group and say, are you struggling with this? What are your top concerns? What are you thinking about for the rest of the year? What's on your roadmap? So taking that feedback can help you create better content for LinkedIn and other channels as well.
Yeah.
But personalize, I think, is the key takeaway to just make the interaction meaningful.
And I think the way you said that is important for people to notice as well, especially if you're going to be like in sales or run a agency, because every question you asked was like, what challenges do you have? You, the customer, you, the potential prospect, what challenges do you have? I think a lot of people on their website or on LinkedIn or in person talk about themselves and their company.
Right.
And instead of like what the customer's pain points and challenges are in those discussions. And like what you're saying, I agree. Using that back in your marketing, in your discussions is gold for sure. And
Yeah,
networking
always
still
be
works
listening.
apparently. Right.
Always be listening.
Yep. So to go to the Salesforce up and comers, the ones that are just getting started in the ecosystem, the ones that are making the jump from maybe college or a different profession, different career, and want to get a start in Salesforce, what type of recommendations or thoughts would you give them?
Number one, always be learning. This space, not just Salesforce, but the general, overall technology space, especially in SaaS, is changing so rapidly. You have to be learning, you have to be on top of what's coming next, not just, next month, next quarter, but what's coming next year. And always be plugged into the roadmap of, where things are headed. Always be looking at the future. So learn, try to get, as much knowledge as possible, not just certifications and Trailhead. Those are more conceptual types of learning, but learn and get that hands-on experience because that's what really matters. So volunteer for projects, even if you don't feel like, you've got all the experience, that's where you're going to learn and get that hands-on experience to complement the more conceptual learning that you get elsewhere. And there's beyond those type of Salesforce specific resources, there's a ton of YouTube videos, how-to, great communities like Salesforce Ben. They have a ton of content. And then go to the events as well, like learn from others based on the experiences that they're having. These events are getting more and more valuable from a sharing knowledge perspective, because that's where you see what the real issues and challenges that customers are facing are and how they're addressing those challenges. And it could be, yes, some are Salesforce specific challenges, but others go beyond Salesforce. So my next piece of advice would be think about surrounding ecosystems beyond just Salesforce and diversify your approach to learning. So whether that's AWS or other tech stacks that are relevant for this space, there's a ton of apps out there that continue to just proliferate every day. And they have, some might end up being acquired by Salesforce at some point. Others, maybe not, but it's a crowded space, and it's important to have that context to understand everything that's out there and how it all really works together. So just continuous learning, and that goes beyond just the Salesforce core platform into some of those surrounding areas as well.
Do you feel that admin is still the entry point, getting your foot in the door and started in the Salesforce ecosystem as talent, or do you think there's other ways to crack into it, be it like a business analyst or product manager, or are there other avenues, or do you think the admin is still like the main way to crack into it?
I think it's more open than it has been. It's more focused on your specific role and what you need to be successful. I'm seeing some clients say they're not pushing for the admin cert right out of the gate. It's more about understanding what you need to know for your role. And Salesforce is really an enabler, but we don't need folks to be skilled up to that level. There's more of a willingness to work with consultants to provide that expertise when it's not available in-house, and maybe there's not a desire to build that level of domain expertise in-house and leverage more of a managed service model going forward.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how do you, switching topics a little bit, how do you stay motivated with your current agency, the direction you're going, and being in the ecosystem so long and all the experience you have? How do you stay motivated?
I'll go back to the in-person events. Just that's, again, top of mind for me, just coming back from one yesterday. That's really where I get the most energy, and that's what keeps me going, is getting out there and meeting with other users, getting their experiences, figuring out where they're struggling and how I can help. It's just so rewarding to be able to take the experience that I've accumulated and help others find solutions just really, really quickly. Because, there's value that comes from each one of those perspectives and knowing where to go to find answers quickly and just how to navigate things. Going back to the Wayfinder concept, like here's your optimal path.
So you're a
Here's
people
what you need to
person.
know.
Yeah. So you enjoy
So
people.
getting out there and having conversations, that's what really keeps me going, whether that's in person or virtual conversations, getting into the communities. Not everything has to be live, but just the ability to interact and help within the community. That's what is most rewarding for me.
That's awesome. And then I know we talked about the people just starting out in the ecosystem, but for someone that's senior like yourself, how do you stay up on top of all the latest technologies, Agentforce, AI, and like you mentioned, the peripheral ones, AWS? How do you go about doing that?
So a lot of the same resources I'm also using myself. So whether it's getting into the user groups and learning from other experts, what's most relevant, I can get into those user group presentations. Also the events like the Dream In series or world tours, I can really just build an agenda that's very specific to the knowledge that I want to add on. So I try not to overwhelm, try not to sign up for too much, but really be laser focused on what do I need to know that's new and relevant, most relevant for my clients, and how can I pass on that knowledge to them. So I'm very prescriptive around what I target from a learning perspective, but I'll use a combination of those resources plus other online channels like YouTube, Salesforce Mastermind. Again, I'll give them a shout out. They're great. They have a ton of content and a great community there as well. Also, other channels online like Reddit, where, conversations are happening, and, that's where some of the challenges get surfaced around. I'm not sure where to go to find an answer to this, or let's talk about Agentforce. What's actually reality versus hype right now. So
Right.
you get so much marketing, push, especially when something like that's launched around Dreamforce, that, you're naturally going to want to question what is real versus what's on the roadmap for, 1, 2, 3 releases, because it's not always clear.
Yep.
So
And
finding out where the other experts are hanging out too is a good path. And it could be any of those channels, or, it could be even as a Salesforce partner. They have some great partner enablement sessions that they lead, and they're, especially with things like Agentforce now, any of those high profile announcements, they'll lead even more of those partner enablement sessions, which I used to be part of internally delivering. So I understand what the calendar looks like and how to plug into that.
perfect. So I guess looking forward, what do you think some of the biggest challenges facing the Salesforce ecosystem, even from a technology perspective, a company perspective, a talent perspective, the saturation people talk about perspective? What do you think some of just the biggest challenges and obstacles are for Salesforce as an ecosystem moving forward?
The biggest challenge from my perspective is more consolidation and more competition. So I'll start with consolidation. What I'm getting at there is thinking about the complexity of tech stacks, whether that's within the Salesforce ecosystem or beyond. There's more consolidation happening when you have overlapping functionality across apps or even within the same platform. So there's a desire to simplify that complexity and create a better experience for users around that. So I think there's going to be more consolidation in this space overall, again, within Salesforce and beyond. So I think you'll start to see more acquisitions where it makes sense for Salesforce to bring in another point solution, and probably some other players, will exit the market if they're not getting a great market share competing. So there's going to be this ongoing consolidation. A great example is, when you think about something like call recording, I have several clients that are using Gong, which is a great point solution for call recording. And there are a ton of other options out there that do this transcription, including, Salesforce native functionality that's part of Sales Cloud to capture that conversation and analyze it. But those capabilities, if you look across those various players, they're pretty standard. There are some differentiating factors, but for the most part, if you put those solutions side by side, they're giving you the same functionality. So I would expect in cases like that for there to be more consolidation and for the best players to win. Also, from a UI standpoint, I think there's going to be more consolidation in the tech stack to deliver a better experience to users so they don't have to learn 3, 4, 5 or more different UIs across these different solutions. So that's
Awesome.
the tech consolidation. I would also expect to see more consolidation on the services side. Again, because there's less differentiation, there are more players in the market. Who's going to rise to the top and actually deliver the most value? And going back to that ROI focus, each of these consolidation areas are driving back to realizing ROI across the tech stack as well as the services surrounding that. So I expect more consolidation and even more competition. And when I say competition, I mean with generative AI specifically and the ability to automate more of the user experience to be dynamic, I expect there to be more competition for the Salesforce platform itself, as well as other platforms like HubSpot and others where the UI has been more rigid over time. And it's customizable, but when you think about generative AI and the ability to actually have a completely customized UI for a particular user, so they're only seeing what's most relevant to them at the right time with the right data, there's a lot of potential there. So I see the overall CRM space itself becoming more competitive as tech capabilities continue to evolve.
That's a good segue. So kind of to wrap it up, looking kind of in the future, we'll call it maybe a prediction. So Salesforce in 10 years from a platform perspective and from a talent ecosystem perspective, you had a magic wand or whatever the magic window, whatever you want to call it, globe. Where do you see both of those in 10 years from right now?
I think there's a lot of hype around AI, but I think the AI, it's real, whether we all want to admit that or not. I think it's leading the way forward in terms of where innovation is headed. Not everyone's ready for it right now, but I think over time, just like with a lot of other advances in this tech space, it'll happen. And we're going to see more and more AI and automation in place across Salesforce and other platforms. So I think the platform will become much more personalized and heavily reliant, like never before, on solid data as a foundation to drive that level of customization. Most clients, no surprise, are struggling with data right now, not having quality data, not having enough data, not having the data where it needs to be. So I think data will take more of a focus than ever before for platforms like Salesforce and others as more of the generative AI and just as we get closer to the next step in the evolution of AI, whether that's general AI, as they're calling it now, or something else that's not even on our radar, without having that data available and protected and actionable, that's going to become the focus, I think.
And do you think
it's been lingering beneath the surface for a lot of clients? Like we could just get by without addressing this now. It's good enough, or we'll work around it. But when that decision is no longer a human one, and it's being acted upon by agents or whatever else they evolve into. And I'm sure they'll be renamed at some point.
Right.
I'm sure Agent Force will become something else. But aside from what it's called, the concept of where we're headed with more and more reliance on automation can help us all be more productive. If you don't have the right data, that's not going to work. So I think there'll be more of a focus on data strategy and also thinking about how users can be more productive with an assist from AI. So how can the platform, whether it's Salesforce or any other platform that you're leveraging, how can you tap into the power of that platform to do your job even better? What can be delegated that's just a repetitive task that you shouldn't be spending time on versus like a more meaningful one that needs that human intelligence? So I think there's going to be this, I think Salesforce is on the right path where it's their messaging now is, humans and machines working together, but finding that right balance is going to become critical. And what can you and what should you delegate to AI versus own yourself? And there's going to be like a risk assessment that needs to happen there.
Right. And I think I think a lot of enterprises, people think it's a large and bigger company challenge and issue with this, but I would think it applies to small businesses as well, right? To smaller force orgs. Yep. And I think sometimes they don't think about that.
Yeah. A lot of times with its innovation, it starts with the larger organizations and then, moves out from there. They will be the early adopters and they'll work through some of the challenges early on, but then, as that continues to evolve, everyone can benefit.
Yep. And then I guess the last one, what's your prediction of the Salesforce ecosystem? What's that going to look like in 10 years? Same, way different, bigger, smaller? From a talent perspective.
I think we will see a consolidation in the market when it comes to talent, especially when there's more, if you think about the AI element of this, where folks can work smarter and knowledge is more available to different types of users than it was before. So I think as knowledge proliferates through AI, that will impact the human side of consulting, where you don't need to reach out to a human for, support on a specific issue. You can ask the agent or whatever the bot that you're interacting with. It can set you on the right path and point you to a resource automatically. But I think what will happen is there will be a higher value on the consultants that can also recognize AI as, an enabler for a broader set of users, as well as an enabler for consultants that are delivering services. So they can work even more efficiently, as well as help their users be more efficient with self-servicing some of that knowledge. So I think there'll be more consolidation, but I think quality will improve overall. And there'll be more of a focus on delivering an even better experience for users.
I think you're right. That's a good way to wrap up. Thanks for being the first. Yeah, thanks for being the first episode. Greatly appreciate it. And again, it's Mike Rogan from Wayfinder.cc, right? Is the address. Awesome. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jon.